Well, hello guys. This is Katie with Vintage and Vinyl, and yes, we're celebrating Christmas. I clicked on the wrong intro there. That's easy to do in StreamYard because all the icons are right next to each other and they look the same. So just enjoy the Christmas intro while you did. And then, of course, I'll bring that back for December. Welcome, everyone joining in the chat. I'm so glad you are here for another reading of House of Flesh. Louis says hello to all of you guys. Now, we are in chapter 17 or 18. We were in 17 last week, and it was really developing well. So I'm excited about continuing on with the read. If you missed any of the chapters, they are always up for replay, so you can go back and rewatch them and catch up with the story. Okay, we have Bob in the chat tonight. Doo-wop Bob, welcome, welcome. Chrissy's Corner for Collectors. Welcome. I'm so glad you're joining us. Maria, Empty Nesting 2. Hello, Maria. Daniel, Tacky is me. Hi, Daniel. Welcome, welcome. And let's see if anyone else is in the chat. I see Proud American. Welcome, PA. I'm so glad you're here, Delbert. And then Vlada is gnawing on a bone. Ooh, Vlada. Vlada's kind of like the dogs in the story. I love this book, and I especially love that it is a gold medal book. Now, this is exciting because gold medal Fawcett Publications really did change the publishing industry forever. They changed the way things were done, and it really was an industry standard setting type of thing that they did. So if you want to learn more about Fawcett, again, I'll link a really good video down below. There's another gentleman on YouTube here that collects these gold medal books, and he's got a great deep dive into the history of gold medal books, Fawcett Publications, and all of that. And it's just really amazing. And Fawcett also invented the spinning magazine racks that you used to see in stores. I don't think that they're really around anymore. I mean, you've got the magazines lined up by the checkout, but I don't think they have those racks anymore. Maybe in bookstores they do, but that is a really, really cool fact about Fawcett. Angela is here. Yay, I'm about... Oh, bless your heart, Angela. Yes, I know. That can be tough. Welcome, Tia Fain. Tim coming in from Canada. I'm so glad you're here. I saw my mom in the chat earlier. Welcome, Mom. I missed your comment. Yes, I think there's going to be a lot of saucy things in this chapter this week. I'm really much looking forward to reading it to you all. I can tell you that this is a really good chapter. One of the best chapters we've probably had yet in this book. So I'm very much looking forward to it. A couple of things happening on my channel this week that you want to stay tuned for before we jump into the reading is don't forget at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time this Wednesday, I am going to have Joni from Vintagerous on for show and tell, and she's going to be showing some of her Canadian glass. So that will be this Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, and I kind of have a double hitter going on Wednesdays because at 7 p.m. Eastern, I do my premieres. So I will have another brooch premiere this Wednesday. So if you've enjoyed bringing back the brooch, you can stay tuned for that and then come back for show and tell at 9:30. But today we are reading House of Flesh. We are now in chapter 18. Again, if you missed any of the chapters before, you can catch the replays. They are up on my channel. Now, the last chapter we were in, we had just found that our main character, Henry, had come back from New York, and he finally was again sleeping with Mrs. Doan. And then, of course, Dr. Doan was outside the door waiting. So we have to see what's going to happen with that, because I think the doctor is finally on to the affair. And he's not a great man since we think that he murdered his previous ex-wife. So there's a lot happening there. Thank you, Angela. It's something new and fun. I'm actually out of my red lipstick. Oh, the horror. So I got to get more of that so I can be back red for all of you guys. I know how much you like the red. Okay, so we are going to get started with chapter 17, or 18, I should say. We were in 17 last week, right now. Okay, let's get to chapter 18. Chapter 18, House of Flesh, starting right now. I ran along the empty road. I had lost 2 precious minutes, one as I had remained dazed and guilty and uncertain after he had disappeared from sight, and then another minute to strip off my pajamas and throw on clothes. They couldn't be far ahead. They were both walking. I should catch up to them within less than a mile. Then what? He had already murdered one wife. Maybe all I was doing was racing to be murdered along with his second wife. I wondered if he had a gun. My lungs were catching fire, but I didn't dare stop running. If he had a gun and proposed to use it, wouldn't the time have been when he stood outside the bungalow listening to us inside? The door had been locked, but he could have smashed a window, or he could have let us have the moment, and then when she stepped out and I had been exposed in the doorway. So he had no gun or didn't plan to use it. Instead, he was stealthily following her home. He was experienced in murder. The cautious way had paid off before. When he had followed her back to their isolated house, he would do to her what he had done to Alice Barton, and then say she had left him. When I was scaring myself with ghosts conjured up by gossip and a couple of bones and my own sense of guilt, was this what was really going on? I knew nothing except that I couldn't leave her alone with him, and I had no idea what I would do and say when I reached them. But where were they? I should have caught up to them by now. From around a sweeping bend, I heard a car engine sputter into life. I stopped, grasping for air. In the stillness of the night, I could hear gears grind. That would be the worn transmission of the station wagon. Through the trees, indirect light filtered in from the far part of the curve, the edges of receding headlights. I sprinted. When I rounded the curve, there was no car or person on the road. Doane must have parked his station wagon here and walked the rest of the way to my bungalow so that he could approach silently and warn Major not to give his presence away. And here, half a minute ago, Layla had gotten into the car with him, but maybe not willingly. Maybe she was already dead. For a moment, I debated whether to return to my car, but I wouldn't gain much time, and it would have been maddening to retrace my steps. I went on, running again, until a stitch in my side slowed me down. I had to walk the rest of the way. For the first time, I put on my flashlight. When I neared the Doane house, I figured that there were some 10 minutes ahead of me. All the tragedy in the world could occur in less time. No dogs rushed out to me or even raised their voices from the barn. I had been very afraid of them. Now, as I turned off the road, a little of the tension left me, but only a little. The station wagon was there, and the house was dark. It struck me that I had made a terrible mistake. It wasn't the station wagon I had heard. They hadn't come here after all. He had taken her into the woods, and on the way, it was too late. With the doused flashlight swinging like a club in my hand, I moved to the station wagon and felt the radiator. It was warm. I pulled beneath into my still burning lungs. They were here then, but where? I looked about slowly and noticed the light in the living room window. The bulb evidently was dim and far from the window, with moonlight on the pane. At first brief glance, the vague glow hadn't looked like an inside light. It told me nothing. Quite possibly, he or she had left it on earlier that night. I went to the porch. My foot was raised to the first step when something like a dark mist whisked past the window. And there was a half-muted sound, a whisper, a sigh, a rustle, something. I couldn't tell except that it came from the house. Somebody or something was in the living room. Cautiously, I placed my raised foot back on the ground. These sagging porch steps I knew from experience would creak. I moved around the corner of the house to the 2 living room windows that faced the road. A dogwood tree, low and heavy with leaves, grew close to the windows. You had to be up close before you noticed the diffused glow. I straightened up at one of the windows. The shade of the floor lamp was tilted horizontally like a baby spotlight, its ray thrown away from the windows and focused on Layla Doane, who was whirling in a huge black veil. It took a long time for me to get it, to believe my eyes, to convince myself that what I saw was real. I had expected her dead or in imminent danger, or at least in a violent quarrel, but here she was serenely dancing for her husband, who a short while ago had been watching her from my bungalow. The low power lamp spread mellowness over her firelight-lit body. She wore nothing but that black veil swirling and writhing around her, and through it, body glimpsed, riper and more naked than nakedness. Doan sat sunk in his armchair, his hands clutching the chair's arms, his chest straining, his shirt and linen jacket pocket raising and falling. His blond hair was tousled like a small boy's, but his face had become loose and sodden. His head was very still, except for his eyes shifting in their sockets to follow her movements. And two of the dogs were there also, the German shepherds, Major and his mate, their muzzles on their extended forepaws like their master, not taking their eyes from her. There was no music. Her body provided its own rhythm. She did not move about on bare and silent feet or throw herself in crude acrobatics. Her torso rippled, and through the large meshed veil, splashes of light intimately caressed her. She swayed sensuously. Her lips were parted in a smile that was like a dance, subtle and sultry and hypnotic. Doan stirred. His massive chest rose as if to bring up breath to say something. The veil whirled and came back to rest on her shoulders like a cape. He subsided with only his hungry eyes alive. This was a ritual of sheer sexuality, like her unheard build-up for lovemaking with me. Where would this end? Would she soon throw herself naked and eager at her husband? I told myself that I should go away because this was indecent spying, and I told myself that I still must not leave her alone with him. Perhaps I could not have torn myself from the window at any rate. Like Doan and the dogs, too, I was held in kind of a trance by what she was doing with her veil and her body. Suddenly, I heard voices of two dogs that were not in the house. I spun from the window. They were coming at me. They must have been loose and away and had returned. I saw them charge past the station wagon, and I ran. Probably, if I had stood my ground, they wouldn't have touched me, but they would have exposed me spying at the window. I was anxious to get to the road and pretend that I had just arrived. My flight showed them that I feared, and they gave chase. The red setter caught me on the road. He hooked his fangs into the fleshy part of my leg. I used my flashlight as a club. The first blow glanced off his skull, and he held on. Then, out of the darkness, the chow hurled herself at me. I went down on both knees. The setter released my leg, but now I was occupied with trying to keep the chow from cutting my throat open. Other dogs barked. A man shouted, "Down! Down, I say!" In their savage frenzy, they didn't immediately obey their master. Doan had to pluck the chow off of me and hurl her away. "Quiet!" Gradually, their voices stilled. Doan was helping me up to my feet. This, on top of a long one, was a bit too much. I thought I would be sick over him, but I managed to hold it down. I stood groggy, unsteady, clinging to him on the moonlight road while the forward dogs prowled restlessly at us. "Having her in your bungalow wasn't enough," Doan said between his teeth. "You had to come here." Fog clouded my brain. No words seemed the right ones, and I felt blood trickle down my leg. Without warning, Doan drove his fist into my jaw. I staggered. He hit me in the cheek, and I went down, slumping once again to my knees. "Let him alone," Layla said quietly. Light covered me. I found my head up. I blinked into the direct glare of the flashlight, and she dipped in, and behind it I saw her stand, barefoot in her calico wrapper. A shotgun rested in the crock of her right arm, and her finger was on the trigger. I'll kill him," Doan's voice was a raged sob. "I saw him run from the window. He was watching your dance." He laughed crazily. This wasn't the first time he saw you naked, but it will be the last." He stepped toward me with his fists that looked the size of basketballs. "Let him alone," Layla repeated. Over his shoulder, he glanced at her for the first time, and it seemed he noticed the shotgun. "Layla, for God's sakes, you wouldn't." "Then don't make me," she said tonelessly. I struggled up to my feet. My torn leg wobbled under me. Nobody spoke. We stood on the road, surrounded by the dogs, who were now as still as we were, and Doan and I stared at the gun which she held pointed at her chest. Her skin was so tight over her cheekbones that it seemed about to split, and her eyes reached darkly in the shadowed pockets. The scant wrapping hung loosely, particularly away from her breasts and thighs, and she had no time to tie it. I found my voice. Look, I said, can't we straighten this out without killing each other? Slowly, Doan turned his head to me. I don't know, he muttered. I know what went on between you and Gail last Wednesday night in New York, I flung at him. So you don't act so goddamn holy yourself. You're wrong. I didn't. I never, he was stammering and denying his own guilt. And to an extent, he had now put himself on the defensive. I bet you didn't, I sneered. Doan looked again at Layla, not so much at her, but at the gun. Layla, what are you going to do? He asked brokenly. Wait for me in the house. No, you come with me. I'll join you in a few minutes. I want to talk to him. You'll come right in? He pleaded. Yes. He took about 3 steps and paused beside her and said emptily, Tie your robe, Layla. With the hand that held the flashlight, she pulled the wrapper close about her. Doan moved on. He had come merely pathetic. 3 of the dogs followed him. Major faithfully remained with his mistress. We didn't speak until the lights went on in his house, and then she said, You fool! Didn't you have to come here? I saw him follow you. I had to protect you. I told you not to worry about me. He'll never harm me, but he might have killed you. Thanks for saving my life, I said dryly. I'd like to do the same for you. Her robe had fallen loose again, more open than before. She ignored it. Did you see me dance? She asked. Yes. I had to. He was terribly upset, of course. Somebody had told him about us. George Wellman? Kenneth said it was a woman's voice. A few days ago, someone called him on the phone and told him and hung up. He didn't believe it. There's so much malicious gossip. Then tonight he came home sooner than I expected, and he found me gone, and he went to your bungalow and saw me. Sooner or later, it was bound to happen. I suppose so, Layla said tiredly. As soon as we were home, I danced for him. It seemed to make him forget everything but me. It makes him want me very much. I know, I saw it. I shifted all my weight from my wounded leg. After dancing, you would have given yourself to him? She retreated into one of her silences. Light appeared in the 2 upstairs windows. I said, You can't go back to him now. I must. This is the time to make the break. Not tonight. Why not tonight? You said you needed a chance to let him know. All right, he knows. But I can't turn out like this in the middle of the night. I need more time. Time for him to kill you? Don't be silly. You keep saying he won't harm you, but you had to dance like that to keep him under control. Will he still be under control when you get back to him tonight? And how will he feel in the morning? I know him. I'll be safe. I put my hands on her. Through the wrapper, her smooth flesh felt cold. Listen, I said. He murdered his first wife. She pulled away from me. Don't come so close. He can see us from the house, and there's no sense in irritating anymore. Did you hear what I said? He murdered Alice. Gossip, she snorted. Last week, the police found bones in a grave at the foot of the knoll. They're bones of a woman, Alice's age and height and weight. You're just telling me this to make me go with you. I swear it. Call up Bill Hickey and ask him. She leaned on the shotgun. No, she said as if to herself. No, those men were looking for lost children. What men? Well, last Friday, I think Kenneth saw some men from the upstairs window at the far end of our property. He went out to them. Some were policemen. They said a child had wandered far from the home, and they were searching for it. They were looking for more bones. They didn't want him to know until they had more evidence, but they know he murdered Alice. She stood with shoulders huddled, bare-legged and childlike in the pale light. Her head came up. I don't believe it. Kenneth is so gentle. The way he was gentle with me just now, he was so gentle, you brought a shotgun to save me from him. Well, that's different. You're a man, and men fight over women. But he loves me. He really loves me. No matter what I do, he'll love me, I said bitterly. Yeah, if you keep dancing for him. Harry, please. Once after we had spent the whole night together, I had asked her to say my name, and she had. But she hadn't uttered it again until now. On her lips it sounded somehow more intimate than even our lovemaking. What is it? I said. Don't you care enough for me? I don't want you to get hurt or dead. Can't you see what will happen if I go with you now? He'll come after us both. There's another gun in the house, a rifle. I thought he was so gentle, I taunted. Yes, with me. But if I go now, you will be in the middle of the night, and it will be different. She moved toward me, but not all the way. I can work it out. Give me time. I can make him see reason. Are you going to sleep with him tonight? Don't ask that. Are you? Well, I'll try not to. He's had a terrible shock tonight. He's not himself. By morning, it will be different. Come here in the morning, and we three will talk it over like civilized people. Wearily, I nodded. I had seen the man watch her dance, and I had seen him crushed and pathetic as he had walked away from us a few minutes ago. He was waiting for her to come back to him because that was all that mattered. I could appreciate how he felt. Blood was flowing down to my sock. I thought that I would keel over if I stood here talking much longer. Till tomorrow, then, she said anxiously, watching my face. All right. She touched my arm lightly and moved away, and Major went with her. I found my flashlight on the road where it had fallen when I had been attacked by the dogs. It still worked. I sat down at the side of the road and pulled up the left leg of my pants, and with my pocket handkerchief wiped off the clotting blood. The cloth had protected me somewhat. The fangs had just barely broken the skin, but there was way more blood than pain. A dog barked distantly, probably Maxine. Maxine, in a way, had started all of this. I remained seated in the damp grass at the side of the road. I looked at my watch, close to 4. Soon dawn would come. I staggered with fatigue. Every downstairs light on that side of the house went out. That one remained on the upstairs, and that would be their bedroom, the master bedroom. Don't think about it. Come back tomorrow and take her away from here and start from scratch together, clean and honest. I pushed myself up on my feet, and anyway, the leg wasn't stiff. I dragged myself home. My bed felt as if I had returned to the warmth of her body. All right, guys, that is it for this chapter. This is really quite the chapter. I'm telling you, there's a lot going on, and I'm just reading what's in the book, so sorry for a little bit of language, but this book is from the 50s, and you would be surprised in the 50s what was going on. I always say that if you do some research into the 50s, you'll find all the different, running around and that kind of thing that was going on. But this doctor is very strange, and I don't like him. So he really is, he's got some issues, and there is lots of sauce, as Bob is pointing out. Now, Bob has already read this book. He collects gold medal books, and so he went ahead and read this. So he knows more than I do. And I'm very excited for you guys to find out the ending. Now, I have not read ahead, and I cannot be bribed, so I don't know what's in the next chapter. But this is very saucy, yes. Yes, he's creepy. He really, really is. I know, Angela. Bad word of the chapter. Oh, and bring a dozen donuts and I'll make coffee. Yeah, I don't know that they should meet in the morning. I kind of feel like that's a little bit of a dangerous thing waiting to happen, And I really feel like he should have the police on standby. But yeah, I for one am scandalized by this book. Yeah, she's questionable, though. She is. There's something, because when she goes into silence and she won't answer his questions, there's something really strange about her. I'm wondering if maybe Doan's just a little scared shell of a man, and that maybe she's the one behind it all. I mean, wouldn't that be wild if the tables did turn like that? I don't know. She is questionable. And yes, Bob is not saying. So that is this chapter's read. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this. A couple of things happening tonight in our vintage community. Tim at Over the Years is not having a sale tonight. I believe he's taking the night off. And we do have George's premiere, Antique Nomad, our Uncle Professor George, is having his sale, YouTube premiere, not sale. I keep wanting to say sale because there's so many sales, but YouTube premiere at 8 o'clock tonight. So I'll be tuning into that. And then don't forget to come back for Vintage Rescue Squad, also at 8. I might have to do some split screens because Pamela Blanchard is going to be on tonight with Danny, the niche lady. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm very excited about that. Well, I know. Did she kill Alice? That is very possible. And Linda's saying that's what she thinks. Well, there could be some sort of split personality. I don't know. Maybe the tides will turn. We will have to see. This is my oh, thank you, Kitschy Corner. Well, you came on a very, very saucy day. I am really enjoying this book, but this book has got some sauce, and I have not read all the way through it. I kind of have been doing a blind reading of this book. So I did not read this in advance before I picked it. I just thought the cover was really fun. And so we just went for it. And this book is getting saucier. I mean, with the language in it, holy cow, for the 50s. Now that seems very racy. But like I said, there was a lot going on in the 50s. In fact, speaking of that, I've been binge watching Hollywood on Netflix. If you have not seen that show, it is really excellent. There's a whole lot of vintage eye candy in that show. It's set in the 40s, but you would be shocked in the 40s. A lot of what was going on, even into the 50s. I mean, especially in Hollywood, but just with people in general, the parties, the drinking, the sleeping around. I mean, there was just a lot. And this book has it all in it as well. So there's always a lot going on in this story that really makes it interesting and wants you to come back. So guys, that is going to do it for me tonight. Thank you so much for tuning into the read. We will see what happens in chapter 19 next week. Don't forget to come back for my show and tell on Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, for my Bring Back the Brooch video at 7 p.m. Eastern. And I will see you guys later around on the tube in the chats. And I hope, as always, you will stay in, stay safe, and binge YouTube. Bye-bye now.